Okay, today I am here with Jim Champ, uh, also on the Open Library staff, and we are going to go through the process of making some edits and changes to the book page on Open Library. The book page is the core page that represents the experience of Open Library. So if we go to openlibrary.org/books, then the identifier of that book, and then a human readable title of that book, and I press enter, then we will be seeing the book page here. The book page has the book cover. It has oftentimes lending options and a preview or read options. It will also have your reading log, which is the ability to add a book to your personal lists or mark it as something that you want to read, or currently reading, or have already read. Uh, there's a title, a subtitle. There are stats about the book. This is kind of accumulative stats, such as the star ratings, how many people have rated the book, how many people want to read it, etc. And then we have a navigation component, which is used to jump to different parts of the page. And then right below the navigation is a what we call the edition summary, or the omnibar, kind of how like the browser has one bar that gives you a summary of everything that you can type into. This is the Open Library Editions omnibar, and it shows you at a glance the published date of this book, as well as the publisher, number of pages. I think we're missing language here, but that seems like a great thing for a contributor to work on. Or it might also be the case that there isn't a language. That might be the case. So typically on other books, let's go to back to the Open Library website really quickly, and let's choose a popular classic book that we imagine might be available in multiple languages. Let's try this one. So here we see that there are previews available in English, Ukrainian, and Danish. And in this case, this edition does have language information, and so we see it in the omnibar. However, we've just discovered a bug, which is as of 2022, April 7th, something that someone in the community can help with, which is if a work, if a book doesn't have languages set, then we see an empty line here that says previews available in. Okay, and then there are some other things on this page, such as subjects, which are expandable. In many cases, this will include places and people as well. Jim, do you want to describe another bug on this page that has to do with subjects?
Sure. So you'll see that the subjects are all links. If you, there you go, collapse that and click on one of the links, you'll see that the whole section expands.
And then
This is not
eventually,
desired behavior.
yeah, that's right. So eventually it'll redirect you to the link, but not before it interprets the click as an instruction to expand the subjects list. So I think what we would want to happen is that if we click on the arrow, it expands and hides. And if we click on the header, the word subjects, it expands and collapses. However, if we click on one of the actual links, we would hope that it just brings us to the link as opposed to also expanding and collapsing. So that's a second bug that shouldn't be too hard, which a member of the community can help with. And then after this overview section, what's the next component we see?
The additions table.
Yeah. So here we have the additions table, which will let's switch tabs back to the other book that has several different editions. Here we can see a little bit more obviously that there are 10 featured editions that are being shown in this table. We can change the the count so that we're seeing more or less. And then we also have an option to see all of the possible editions of this work. And we can search through it by typing something like English. And here we're only seeing books that, or editions that are written in English. Okay, and then we have the next section, which is the details. This tells us more about both the work and this specific edition, such as Dewey Decimal classifications. These are librarian classification numbers. Then also information about the physical object, ID numbers, etc. And then after that, we have community reviews, which are labels and tags that members of the community use to describe either what they thought about the book or properties of the book, such as someone might vote that they thought this book was confusing or well organized. They might say that it had a hopeful mood, or that it was reflective. Or you can add information about its style, etc. And then last but not least, we have community lists. These are lists that patrons have added this book to. And that can be done up here with the want to read button. If you click the down arrow, then you can add this book to one of your lists, or you can click this button to create a new list at the bottom of this form. All right. There are a few other elements of this page, such as other books that you might like, which have the same subject as this book, or other books by this same author. And then last but not least, at the bottom here, we have a history section, which shows what recent changes, just like Wikipedia has members of the community who make edits. This shows the last few edits to this page, because if we scroll up, we'll see an edit button that we can use when we're logged in to make changes to this work and its editions. So that at a glance is the book page. If you are a software developer, you have an additional feature that you can use, which is adding $debug equals true to the URL. This is a URL get parameter or a query parameter, which when added will give you profiling and a breakdown of how long different components on the page took to load and also their internal values. So for instance, this section right here is telling us about the availability of this book. And it's giving us information such as whether it's readable or whether it's borrowable. And this underlying data is what is used to generate this button. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we will see a table that shows us the breakdown component by component of how long this page took to load. So in this case, getting all of the editions of this work or of this book, that is populating this editions table, was seemingly the most expensive thing on the page. And then the second one looks like maybe it was fetching the vendor sidebar information, which is the Amazon and Bedworld books and any other vendor that might have the book available, the physical book available for patrons to pursue. Jim, anything that you want to add about the book page UI?
I think this pretty much covers it. I would mention that this is currently changing. We're focusing our efforts on this page. So things may be different by the time you see this video.
That is a great point. Speaking of which, we've talked about the Omnibar or the edition bar here. I'm currently logged in as a special type of user or a special type of patron who has librarian permissions. And so someone else who visits this page may not see all the fields that I see. And that's not a bug. If I open up a new incognito window where I am not logged in, we can see these side by side. The bar on the left has far fewer fields, and we can see here the Internet Archive ID and the ISBNs are hidden for non-librarians. Okay, so something else we should probably also show. I'm going to remove the debug equals true so that we don't have all this extra JSON and markup that is cluttering the interface. What did we say is currently broken or has an opportunity to be fixed? We said the previews available in, right? So here it says previews available in, but it doesn't actually have any languages. And so we probably don't want to show previews available in the text because it looks like it's referring to this paragraph, or at least it does to me. To you as well, Jim?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think that's pretty confusing. So that's one opportunity to fix. Another one actually is the star ratings component here. On this page, we just see a leading bullet mark and no star ratings at all. So maybe the design can be improved here so that we don't have an awkward leading bullet mark here. And then a third thing that we talked about are the subject tags. Expanding it by clicking the word subject or the arrow makes sense. But if we're clicking on one of the links, we don't want that to be a trigger to expand or collapse the subjects. Then we have another issue around the navigation. Do you want to talk a little bit about the navigation in mobile?
Sure. So if we look at a mobile view of the site, and that might be a little bit too wide of a screen for this.
Well, why don't we? I bet we can nudge it into a mobile view by using the developer tools.
That should work. So if we scroll, yep, there it is. So you'll see that the nav bar breaks across the line. So we need to fix the overflow there.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly what the fix is. This might be as simple as something like overflow X auto, maybe. There's something also about this is being flexed or something along the lines. So we'll have to double check. But that's another bug. Overflow X. Yeah, we can try to debug that later. That's another, should be a pretty quick opportunity. Do we also want to talk about the title and the author in mobile view?
We could. So but my understanding is the author and the title. Oh, wait. Go ahead, Mike.
So I think this is the one where above the fold, we're seeing a book cover and some borrow options, but it's not until we scroll way down and then see library information, where these books can be found in the library, where these books can be purchased online, where it can be shared. Then finally, we see the title of this book. So I think another objective is that we would like the top level information here, basically these 3 lines, the title, the subtitle, the author, maybe these star ratings to show up either above or below the book cover. So that when you land on the page, you have an idea of what book you're on. This is especially important in cases like this, where it's very hard to see from the book cover what book this is. And I think those are the main issues. I think there was another request or issue around the table of contents. I can't think of a good example of a book off the top of my head with a table of contents. Maybe Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. We can see if this has a table of contents. I know that the styling could definitely benefit from attention. Let's see if we won. We won here. Nope, I don't see a table of contents. Okay, we'll skip that for now. Why don't we jump into what is required to make changes to the book page? So the first thing that a contributor is likely going to have to do is set up a development environment. So I've already done some of that work right here. The way that I got here is I went to github.com/internet archive/open library. From the main open library page, I clicked on the Docker folder. And in the Docker folder, we see instructions for setting up our Docker environment. I just ran a Docker Compose build. Here is the result, where in this case, there are 9 different steps that were run in order to build an image. An image is kind of like an operating system that has certain pieces of software and configurations installed that can then be spun up almost like a virtual machine, which is how we're going to run the entirety of the Open Library website from our local computers. So the next thing I'm going to do is start up the application in daemon mode with this -d rather. Also, it's probably worth noting that in order to run Docker Compose build, the first thing that I had to do was I had to clone the actual repository. So I did a git clone on Open Library, which would have involved me going to this code button and then copying the URL and then running git clone on this URL. And the end result of performing that git clone would be that I have the entire Open Library project pulled down on my local machine. And then inside of this project directory is where I ran the Docker build commands that we're running right now. So I ran Docker Compose build. Now I ran Docker Compose up-d. And so if I now go to my favorite web browser and I type localhost, I think this is on port 8080.
Correct.
And I press enter. Then we will see, hopefully, the development version of the Open Library website running on our local computer. And so our task is going to be to make a change or make several changes or to understand the book page. So the first thing that would be nice is to understand as we're making changes to the website, especially if we're logging information in our scripts or in the application, how do we see that? And so if I think I can just do Docker Compose log, here this will work, logs --tail equals 20 is going to give us 20 lines. -f means that it's going to follow the logs. Following means that it'll remain attached. It'll basically be an active reader on the Docker logs. And then we're going to mention which container we would like to listen to. Now, I haven't really talked much about containers here, and that is probably a better topic for the Docker video that we have up on, let's see, where is that? That's archive.org, details, Open Library Tour 2020. I believe one of our videos is on back in 2018. It might be a little stale, but we have a Docker setup. The only thing that really should have changed are the instructions that are on the GitHub page. But a lot of the other explanations will probably still be useful. So if you have questions about Docker, what Docker is being used for, how we're using it, I would encourage you to watch the video on archive.org/details/Open Library-Tour-2020. Okay. In this case, I can give a very simple explanation, which is when we build the Open Library service, the whole application has several different components, and these components are run in different containers. One container is for the database, as we create new books on the platform, if we were to import a new book, that would go into the database. We also have a Open Library Solr. Solr is a search engine technology based on Lucene. Elasticsearch is very similar, also based on Lucene. So whenever we are doing search infrastructure or building a search index, that is done in the Solr container. So far we have the database, the search engine. You can see that we have a container for book covers. This is a microservice that will store and serve up book cover images. And then we have a container called Infobase, which handles a lot of the database operations. It's kind of like an ORM service that lives on top of the database that just makes it easy for the Open Library web application, the actual application that a patron interfaces with, to send data to the database. So the last container is the web container, which is almost always, as a kind of a new contributor, the container that you'll likely be concerned with. This is what runs the whole website. The web container sits on top of the Infobase container, which allows it to make updates to the database container. For now, what really matters is to know that each of these are independent individual containers that we can interact with. And the one that we would like to see the logs of is web. Normally, we would refer to it by its full name of One Open Library Web 1, but we're using a special program, kind of a utility wrapper called Docker Compose, which will allow us to reference a nickname. And we can see the nicknames by, I believe, typing Docker PS, I think. I don't see web. I don't see the web nickname. Maybe that's in the Docker Compose script. I'm pretty sure that's right. Docker compose.yaml. I don't want to get in the weeds too much here. I think, yeah. So in the Docker Compose YAML file, we'll see the nicknames of each of these services, such as web, Solr, etc. So you can just believe me that for now, we're going to call our Docker Compose logs --tail20 to have 20 lines. We're going to follow the logs and we're going to use web. We press enter. And now if maybe I'll show these side by side. If I refresh the website, we can actually see the calls that are being made under the hood and evaluate whether the application is doing the things we expect it to. And of course, in our programming, we can add debug statements that will make it easier for us to determine whether code is running as we expect. So we can now click on a book page and see if we're given any hints on where to look within our code. See, we see some database calls that are being made. We see some Solr calls that are being made, some Infogami fetches for books, but nothing obvious. And so why don't we go ahead and cheat a little bit and just describe where the books page files can be found. Do you want to start us off, Jim?
Sure. So if we go back to the main page of Open Library here, Open Library, the directory has all of our code. If we go to templates, this will have our templates. The books page is a type edition. So if you go down to types, then click on edition, and then view.html will be the main template for the books page.
Yep. And if anyone wants to know kind of like the background of why the project is organized like this, I think in the onboarding video, the technical onboarding video, it describes Infogami types. Basically, the Open Library website has a directory called templates type, which defines several different templates that we have. And Infogami magically renders the page for us according to a convention, which is the type, such as type edition, will have a file called view.html that Infogami magically calls, and it passes a type, or it passes an object of this type to the template. That's a little confusing, so why don't we look at an example here? So here, when we go to, we should probably choose an edition, right? That would make more sense.
Yes.
So I'm going to click on one of the editions in this table. And we see that the URL that we're on is openlibrary.org/books. Under the hood, you'll have to trust that /books/ an identifier is going to route us to a editions template. And this ID is going to be used to fetch all of the underlying data for this edition and pass it in to this template as the variable page. So here we are on the book page, and a specific edition is passed in as the variable page. And if we scroll down, we will see many of the components on this page, such as, I think we need to scroll a little bit, but we will see the edition's cover. So this block of code around line 179 is going to be this sidebar here. In fact, I think within the edition cover, we're calling another file called databar work. And this does a few things. What does this do, Jim?
Databar work that essentially renders the entire left sidebar there.
Yeah, that's right. I think exactly the entire sidebar. So that includes the book cover, the lending options and preview, the list widget, the star ratings, the community reviews, and the book notes. And then it also includes the vendor sidebar, I believe, and the share options. So if we wanted to access that file and all of those components, where would we look? We're currently in Open Library templates within the edition type and the main page, the view.html, which is an Infogami thing. So where are the macros?
Well, there's another directory called macros that should be Open Library macros.
Yeah. So instead of Open Library templates, we go into Open Library macros, and then we're looking for databar work, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we can keep this up for a second, but here we see that the databar work has the cover. Here's where the cover is generated. And then below that, we see, let's see here, the list widget. Do you see the loan status below it? So this loan status line, what does the loan status line do?
The loan status line those are our buttons, correct? Like our loan buttons. Okay.
Yeah. So both the read button and either the search inside or the preview or the borrow button, all of those are going to be handled by this one piece of code called loan status. And I think we have a video on that, don't we?
We do. We do have a video on that.
Yeah. So if we go to archive.org, details, to Open Library Tour 2020 again, I think we have one called the Open Library Availability Button Technical Walkthrough. Riveting. And that video will tell us all about the loan status button, which is generated in the databar work macro, which in turn is generated by the books page. And the books page as we mentioned, is Open Library Templates type edition view. There's nothing that we need to do in order to get the edition passed in. Open Library automatically handles all of that. All we have to do is edit this file, and then we can see the changes on our machine. So let's see if there's any other. Okay, why don't we do this? Because I want to keep this video as short as we can. So far, we've described the Docker setup. We've gotten up and running. We've described the books page, kind of the autonomy of the books page from a UX perspective. We have also taken a look at the main template for the code and one of the sub templates, the macro, the data bar work macro. I think the next thing we should probably do is try to make an edit in the book page, just to give someone an idea of how that might happen. And then finally, we should take a really quick peek at where the CSS for this page lives and the JavaScript. And I think with that, someone should be powered with all of the tools they need to start making contributions. Okay, so I'm going to get out of the log because I'm still attached to the logger. We ran this command, the Docker compose, and instead, rather than looking on GitHub, because I've already pulled all of this code down and I'm running it in a set of Docker containers, I'm going to open up the code in my favorite text editor so that we can actually edit the code that we're using to power the website here. Okay. Then also, it looks like I may need to run a.
Yeah, we might want to build the front end assets just to show how that's done.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Yes, please. So first, what we're going to do, I believe, is a Docker compose, right?
Yes.
And then is this an exec?
It is an exec web bash.
Web bash, or we might be able to just do a make
right.
directly, right?
You can do that too. I tend not to use make, so I'm not quite sure what the proper command is.
So if we do a web bash, what's the next step?
So once we're in here, I usually run npm run build-assets.
Build-assets. And I'm actually curious. I'm going to leave the container really quickly, only because I want to see, do we have a build assets in our make file? And I think we do. I think all of that will happen when we run a make.js.
Yeah, make so the npm calls the make file. Sometimes the make file calls npm. It's a little.
Got it.
Yeah.
Why don't we try this? Docker compose exec web make JS and CSS.
Yes.
And then we can ramble for a bit, right? So this is going to take a little bit of time, I think.
CSS is speedy, but JS takes a little bit of time. Our view components take a lot of time.
Oh, do we need to build the components as well?
No, we shouldn't have to. Unless we're doing something with a review. I think that's one of the things on this page that is a view component.
Yeah. I think we can probably leave that alone for now.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, we will let that run, and then I'm going to open up a new window, and then, oops. All right, and we'll go into the Open Library project again. So in one window, I'm just having it run this Docker compose exec web. This part of the command is sending a request for Docker to run a command within the container, as opposed to run within the web container, as opposed to my machine. So I want it to go inside the running container that's running the web application, and I want it to use our make file to build the instructions that we have listed there for building the CSS and building the JS. And if we go back to GitHub for a moment, and then we go into the Open Library project and we look in the make file, it's an actual file in the project, then we can see what's happening when we run make.js. Here are the commands that are being run. When we run make CSS, here are the commands that are being run. And it looks like it has just finished doing all the things that we want it to do. We probably have to restart, don't we?
No, we can just reload the page and see the changes.
Boom. So now everything looks great. Ooh, undetermined. That looks like an interesting bug as well. Okay, we can deal with that later. So now we have a clean container that has all of the JavaScript and CSS built. We're going to open up the book page template and see if we can make a change. In fact, maybe we can give folks a head start in fixing one of these issues by trying to investigate one of those changes. So one thing that we can do is we can look for the previews available in when something may not have a language.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we're going to do here, we should also mention that even though Docker is the software which is running the web application in a container, it's also set up in such a way such that the files for the website that are on your computer are mounted inside of the Docker container. So you can make edits outside of your container, and that will appear or get copied over in real time into the container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a text editor called Emacs just because I like Emacs. You can use a visual editor, but I want to be clear that I'm editing the files on my computer, and they are also getting edited within the Docker container and will be reflected on the website that we're editing. So here I'm going to open up, we said it's Open Library, Templates, Type, Edition, View. Although I want no windowing mode, that's my personal preference. And then I'm going to look for previews. Okay, so here's where we get a list of all of the editions if they have previews, and we save that in a variable. I'm going to look where else previews is being used. So it looks like previews is around line 268. We can see we're making a paragraph tag, and then we're looping for every edition in these previews. And we're saying if this edition's language has not been seen yet, then we are going to paste it or include it on the page. But what do you think is the problem that we're seeing here, Jim?
So I'm thinking that maybe let me see, languages may not have a name, or
yeah, that's an interest, because we are doing a check here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are saying if we only show this section if there are previews, but supposedly there are previews. They just must be empty or something. So I think the solution would be someone might be able to edit this to say if there are previews and at least one of the previews is not empty, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what that would look like, but something like if previews and each edition has a value for E in previews. And then we might be able to kill this line. I think this could do the trick. I'm not positive, but this is the block of code where I would experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And we can save this. And then also, just for fun, we can add a new tag right here called Hello World. And I'm going to save it. I've just saved that file. Now I'm going to go back to our page here. And it's unclear to me whether we'll need to restart the container. Oh, here we go.
Should work. Yep.
Yeah. So now by adding this tag and just saving the file and then reloading the page, we can see that it now says hello world. I wonder if there's a good way for us to find an edition that doesn't have a language. Okay, this one says English. What if we were to really cheat here and we were to remove the language from this test book? Remember that we're working on localhost. This is not using production data. This is using data that has been copied into our local development environment. So we should feel free to make edits and changes here. So here we're going to look for English. I think I'm going to remove that. And I'll leave a note removing English language. Now the drum roll, the question is, if we restart the, we need to clear cache, I guess, maybe. So that would be Docker compose. Let me see what it's called in the Docker compose YAML. Memcache. So we'll say Docker compose restart memcache. Now, if we reload the page here, it might be a tiny bit slower. Interesting. We still see the previews available in English. So maybe it didn't like our edit. Or maybe we have another bug. It's possible. Hypothetically, that should have worked. And if it didn't, then we can open up a separate bug report for that. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's not working. That might also be related to the bug on the website. We can see. So this is how you edit a book page. But what if we wanted to change the styling of some of these components? For instance, here it says class preview languages. Do you know, Jim, where I can find the CSS that corresponds to the book page?
Sure. So I think at the root we have a static folder.
Yeah, let's take a look. So at the root, we have a static folder. Yep, right here.
Mm-hmm. Inside there should be a CSS directory.
Yep, I see CSS.
And here we go. So we have a number of less files here. I think.
And we might be able to do a git grep for preview languages. And that's telling us that preview languages is found in a less file called components work.less. So why don't we go into components and we can open up work.less. And here we're going to see the majority of the styles for the books page. And we're also going to notice that this page also imports other less files, such as these two are for the book cover. This is for the ratings form. I think these two are both for the want to read button.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if I... so let's actually take a look at the preview languages. What if I make the font size 3 M's here, and then I save it? Is that going to show up here?
No, you'll have to rebuild the CSS.
Okay, we'll have to rebuild the CSS. And just as a reminder, how do we go about doing that?
So we'll have to do it in the web container. We would run make CSS.
Yep. So we can do Docker compose web make CSS.
Exec.
Oh, you're right.
Mhm. Before
Docker
web.
compose exec web make CSS,
Mhm.
and we'll press enter. So this is kind of annoying because if someone is doing design on the books page and they're making a lot of changes, then they have to go through the process of rebuilding the CSS from the less files each time.
You might not know about this, Mac, but we can watch the CSS files. So if there's any change, it will automatically rebuild.
That's awesome. What is the right way to do that? Is there
Okay.
documentation on it?
It's an npm script, so we would run docker compose exec web
Docker compose exec web
npm run watch dash css.
Let's give that a shot. All right. So here I can see that it is running the npm watch module, and it looks like it's staying attached. And so now if I open up a file, a CSS file or a less file, and I make a change, it should automatically be reflected. So we can test that out, right? So for now, we should see an enormous previews available in, which I'm not. Probably this might be cache related.
Oh, is this for mobile? Is this like a mobile style role? Maybe.
That's a great question. Let's see. See, I am so glad you're on the call. I wouldn't have even thought. So what we can do is let's go back into static, CSS, components. I think we said it's work about less. And then we're looking for the previews. I only see one style, but I am imagining it's possible that we need to restart the container. I don't know why, but let's give that a shot.
Sure.
So to do that, we would do Docker compose, restart web, and why don't we also restart memcached, which is just basically all of the temporary cached results that we keep in memory in order to speed up the website. And so we're now having it restart two separate containers, done, and eventually done. Maybe it's complaining because we're still attached to, oh, no, it's good. And we're loading. All right, I'm somewhat perplexed why this component is not getting the treatment that we specified.
Oh,
here we go. It is.
It's being overridden by, yeah.
All right, that's great news. What is it being overwritten by? It's not.
Let me see. It's div.addition about p.
Okay, cool. Well, that's another opportunity. That's going to annoy someone. But at least we know it is working. So why don't we restart our watch CSS command and try to change something else. So I'm going to open up the static CSS components, and then the work.less. And let's choose something that is almost certain to have an impact, such as, how about the work menu? What if we just make the work menu have like a font size of 3M?
Maybe it'll work. If that doesn't work, we might want to change the color or something.
Yeah. All right, we'll refresh this. We should be expecting a very prominent nav bar. We can change the color too. Color.
Red.
Sure.
Sticks out. Huh.
It looks like it's definitely trying to build. Maybe it's just taking a second.
Maybe it was still building whenever.
Ah.
Okay.
Wow, both the font size and the color are being overridden by. That is amazing.
Yeah, there's some room for improvement with our styles, I think, maybe.
That's a good takeaway. Let's see what we can. Okay, right here. Why don't we override the background of our edition overview and we'll make that red. And this, after after it loads, we will see hopefully pretty definitively that our edition information has a different background color. Am I looking at the right component? Edition overview?
Edition overview. You can search in.
Oh, this is. I see. We want the omnibar.
Oh, okay.
Omnibar. Here we go.
Omniline, yeah.
I'm going to set the background after the other background. I'll wait for it to build. If we lose 4 times in a row,
we might want to move on. Oh my.
How is that possible? I would want to check whether we're in the wrong file. Oh, there we go. It's just
okay. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, the watch method is succeeding, so we can actually remove this background and save it. And then the next time that we refresh the book page, we should see that this red returns to its normal color, hopefully. Once it's done
building.
Yeah. Trying to.
There we go.
Then we see it return back to gray. So maybe there's I think it would be great, actually. This is completely separate from this video, but I bet only some of these pages are changing. I'm wondering if there's a way for us to
just identify. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to need all of them in order to generate the single CSS file.
Mm-hmm.
But there's probably something more clever we can do to, especially in dev mode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's maybe remove the hello world for now, and then we can move on to the last piece, which will be the JavaScript. Sound good? And then we can call it a day. All right, so we are going to go into, again, if we want to go into the template for the book page, then we're going to go into Open Library and Templates. We are on the URL for an edition, which is a type. So we're going to say type edition, and it's just an Infogami convention to use view.html. Again, when we look at this first line of Pythonic template syntax, this is a WebPy thing. We see that page is our edition that's getting passed into the template. In fact, instead of hello world, what we can actually do is just replace this with the page itself. And then when we refresh, hopefully we should see information about the edition. And we do. We see that page, which gets automatically passed into this template by Infogami, is an addition called Travels into Several Remote Nations of the World, which is great. Okay, we can remove that. So now let's say we wanted to add a subject, or we wanted to change the subject click behavior. Where would I go to find the JavaScript that makes this page run?
Sure. So there is a plugins directory. I forget if that's it's probably Open Library plugins. Open Library again, I think.
Yep. So within plugins, the technical video, which is also on, I think this was archive.org details, Open Library Tour 2020. There's a video called.
Oh, you just passed it. Technical walkthrough.
I think it's this one, the technical overview.
Oh, okay.
Is there another one?
Maybe it had a similar name. You're probably right though.
Okay, I think that the technical overview describes some of the Infogami internals, and it also describes the plugins directory. So plugins has things like borrowing functionality and adding a book and user account stuff, which is all in upstream. And then it also has some API pages and other endpoints like the homepage that are nested within the Open Library directory. And in this case, I think there's another directory called JS.
Yes.
Okay, so we are within the Git repo for Open Library, we're in Open Library plugins, Open Library again, and then JS. And here's where all the JavaScript lives. And I'm seeing a whole mess of different JavaScript files here. So how might I gain an idea of which ones run this page or are used here?
So I usually look at class names. Also, there is like a main entry point for all of our JS, which is the index.js in this directory.
Okay. So we are now in Open Library plugins, Open Library JS, index.js.
And this is where we import like all of our other JS files, depending on what component or what elements we find on a page.
Right. So we conditionally load different things.
I think that searching for subjects here might point us to the right file.
Cool. Got it. So index.js is a file that conditionally loads all of the components across Open Library, depending on what page we're on and what components are listed on the page. That's right?
Yes.
Okay. So for instance, if we wanted to learn about, I'm going to just choose a random thing. Like here, if I hover over the book cover and I'm logged in, then it says add a cover image. And if I click that, it triggers some JavaScript. Do you think it's fair to say that if I just try to find representative text like covers, and then I search for a cover, here we go, manage cover elements.
Yeah. That tends to help. I'm trying to find specifically in that file where the subject stuff is though.
Okay. And then in this case, right, so we did a search for subjects. And then if I open up subjects, then
this doesn't look right.
This might be the subjects page. I think what we want is there's something called clamp.
Maybe the clampers file.
Yeah. So why don't we do this command I find helps me all the time. Get grep will allow you to search for a piece of text, and it will return the files that it exists within. And so here we see that index.js has a reference to clamp, and it's a module called clampers, I think.
Let me see.
Module init
yes.
clampers. So why don't we see if we can find, I think this is within, so here's clampers, and then it does, so all the code actually might just be, oh, it's in readmore.js.
Yeah.
Readmore.js. So this is another indicator to anyone watching this this video that JavaScript is likely one of the opportunities for us to improve our organization, both from a documentation perspective, but also just from a technical hierarchical perspective. In this case, though, here what we're doing is basically saying if there's any components on the left, we're saying if there are any components on the page that include either read more or a clamp, then conditionally we're going to load the JavaScript for read more. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
And then we run the initialization code, which is up here, if we find those components on the page. So this JavaScript could actually run on any page on Open Library. It's not just for the books page. And then there are two things here. One is the init of the read more button, which is what we're using for the description of the book. It uses read more, read less, which also seems to have a little bug. If the descriptions are very short, it looks like it still uses the read more, read less, which is another opportunity from someone in the community. And then the clamper is what is used to truncate the subjects. And so if we were to right click on this component, then we would see that there's a class on this element called a clamp, and that is what is being decorated within the init clampers method. So if someone wanted to fix the subjects so that clicking on one of the links did not expand or collapse the whole section, then this is the block of code that one would look for. Right now, anything with any child within the clamp, that's any of these tags, will also trigger. But what we probably want to do is make sure that the tag itself, but none of its children, result in clamping. I think that's right.
I think
okay. So just as an overview here, we have gone over the fundamentals of Docker. We've used Docker to build a local environment and shown where on the Git repo to do that. Even before that, we first git cloned our repository, and then we ran the Docker commands within our Git repository. We then did a really quick survey of the anatomy of the book page itself, which showed us what are the different components of the book page, the edition bar, the cover, the whole left sidebar, which included the cover section, the loan status button, which is responsible for the previews and everything else. We talked about the editions table. We talked about the nav bar for jumping to each section on the page. We then talked about a few things that are broken with the books page. Actually, that might have been the main focus of the whole video, unfortunately, is spotting little things that were broken. Then we talked about the code under the scenes, the templates that render both the sidebar and the entire type edition, the book page. Finally, we talked about the JavaScript and the CSS that are used to augment the book page, and then some Docker commands that allow us to view the logs and also to watch the changes to the CSS. Are those also changes to the JS?
We have a separate command. It's just watch instead of watch CSS that watches JS.
Awesome.
But not both at the same time.
Got it. we could hypothetically run two different commands and get that functionality. But
They've done.
all right. Well, I think that is it for now. This has been a longer session than we planned, but hopefully is comprehensive for anyone who's looking to get started with the book page. And we look forward to any questions that you have. And if you notice an issue that we missed on the books page, please do open it on GitHub and try to help us out. We would love your contributions. And thank you very much, Jim, also for being my partner on this one.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
All right, cheers.